Hi. I was recently commissioned to do a piece for a curation company in New York City. And I'm originally from Long Island, so that was a really nice taste of home. They're called Let's Curate. And I'm just going to give a short little intro of my artistic perspective because where I'm coming from is slightly esoteric, which is a specific area of knowledge that not everybody's aware of. So, first off, I've always been really interested in religion. I've always kind of, been living in my head, not in a bad way, but like always thinking. And I'm kind of a loner type. So, I've always enjoyed how religion has illustrated for me the patterns of reality and have really helped me understand things. Um, whoever's watching this, uh, probably have encountered a religious person or people, and it almost feels like they kind of believe in like Santa Claus or like the Easter Bunny or a sky god. Like it feels like that, and what you're probably encountering is a materialist who just happens to believe in God, because we're all pretty much materialist thinkers. And they seem to like to hold on to like the facts, like in the Bible, like it happened, it all happened this way, it's all literal. And I'm not saying certain things didn't happen, and I'm not saying that everything happened, but it's really the meaning that informs the fact that is what's most important. Um, and that's the language of symbolism, and that's the lens that you put on in order to understand that tradition, and that's how you're going to find those diamonds in the dark. So the language of symbolism is what informs my images. Now, what is symbolism? Okay. So symbolism is basically the physical expression of meaning. It is, or it like the abstract concepts, abstract principles expressed in a concrete form. So, for example, your head, it has thoughts and feelings and ideas, and your body expresses that. It expresses it through your facial expressions. It expresses it, maybe creatively. It even expresses it based on what direction you decide to walk in. So, um, that is a pretty good example of how, abstract and material kind of unite. So that's what symbolism is. And symbolism is based on the universal human experience. So it's not subjective in the sense where you can arbitrarily assign meaning to a physical expression or an image or an object. It doesn't work that way. Like you can't say, oh, a tree represents fertility because it's leafy and it has fruit. A tree does not represent fertility. Um, the symbol has to make sense in every story it appears in. And a collection of stories usually forms a tradition, and a tradition usually informs society. So, it goes like religion informs culture, culture informs politics, blah 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 blah. That's how it usually goes. So, we still operate in these symbolic structures, but we've lost the language for it, and we are currently in a meaning crisis. COVID has especially accelerated the meaning crisis that we were already in. But it's really interesting that COVID has kind of awakened the pattern of extreme purification. And there might not be a narrative connection between COVID and the George Floyd protests, but there's a symbolic pattern connection. And that symbolic pattern connection is extreme purification of our innards. So, not only our inner biology, but our inner thoughts, our impure thoughts, our impure feelings, that sort of thing. I'm sure you've seen the sign where it says on the sign, racism is the real pandemic. So there you have it. And what certain image interested me in extreme purification is actually the moth. This is my colored pencil test, and this is my test with my chosen medium, in which I use eyeshadow palettes, which we can talk about in the interview a little bit more. But anyway, the moth just seems to have so much rich symbolism. They are also used in occultism quite a bit, and maybe for different objectives, but it's really about how you communicate the symbol. So the symbol, or rather the moth, shows up in the Bible about a dozen times, and what the moth expresses is decay, basically, especially the eating of clothing, and the thing that shields us from death. It basically is death and decay, and although death and decay are dark forces, the moth still reminds us of the light, actually, by showing us that, to put our hope in eternal treasures and not material treasures, because all material treasures will eventually turn to dust. So it's interesting how it's a dark force that actually reminds us of the light. But there's more. There's still more on top of that. What's interesting about the moth is that it's a feature of time that represents decay. So time is an absurd feature in this world. It's death, rebirth, death, rebirth, death, rebirth. It's always something turning into its opposite. And I would say that the moth is also an absurd creature, because although it represents decay, it eats. So it represents decay by eating. It is also allows itself to be eaten by light. So it's an instrument of its own death by light or fire, by extreme purification. And this is just all to say that I think the moth encapsulates the concept perfectly, that extreme forces of purification are always a self-defeating principle, and will always be swallowed up by death and decay, or the instrument of time. And I know this is like a crash course in symbolism. Don't feel bad if you don't get it. But that's just basically where I'm coming from, and hopefully, that gives us a starting point for the interview, and stay tuned. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you later. Bye.